Welcome into Locked On Seminoles. I am Brian Smith. We're doing a live show tonight, and we're going to be talking about Florida State and Alabama. Is Alabama really a 13.5-point favorite? We're going to talk about it here on Locked On Seminoles.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. And today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. The Florida State Seminoles are still a 13.5-point underdog at home in Doak Campbell Stadium to Alabama. That'll be the feature of the show. We'll get to that in just a moment. We're also going to talk about the impact players for Florida State in the freshman class, including at least one guy that is expected to start, possibly more. It's been a good recruiting year for Florida State coming in with this group. Some guys that enrolled early are doing well, and one who may start didn't even enroll until this summer. Going to break down the key players, including some redshirt freshmen and stuff too. It's a lot of fun to talk about the new guys that are kind of breaking through and the new generation of Florida State football. We're also going to talk about the schedule pitfalls beyond the Alabama game. And to finish off, Miami. Are you buying the hype? I'm starting to look over some of the ACC teams, and I want to talk about Miami tonight. I'm not sure I'm buying the hype on the Hurricanes. So let's start off with the discussion about the Alabama Crimson Tide being, quote unquote, by FanDuel, a 13.5-point favorite over the Florida State Seminoles. Do you really buy that? I don't, and I have a couple of major reasons why. Feel free to jump in the chat and make your comments known. I'll get to those here in a few minutes. I will absolutely go through and read your commentary. And if you have something else you want me to talk about on a show, or if you have a comment from another show, again, fire away. But here's the number one reason that I'm not buying it. Florida State's roster is just better than it was last year. And I'm not talking entirely about physical skill. They're more bought in. Last year, Florida State's team was about as far from bought in to a team concept as you can be. That's from people that I've spoken to. That's from people that I've spoken to who some cover the team and some that are kind of around it. And you can just tell by the body language on the field, like you didn't need contacts to know that. They weren't bought in. Based on what's been going on through spring practice, summer conditioning, and just the little bit of workouts they get to do with the coaches, I haven't heard anything about locker room concern, the locker room chatter about, who's got the most in. It's not the same way. That is the biggest reason, in my opinion, that Florida State will be more competitive with any team they play. Forget the situation with Alabama. If you're not bought in, it doesn't matter what your talent is, because if you're a 5-tool player, but you're only given 80%, you're not a 5-tool player. Florida State has more advantages this year because they're more congruent, and that's going to pay dividends. In conjunction with that, the second point, and this is my other major reason, we can get into matchups a little bit with Bama in a second. It's just the coaching staff is better. I'm not trying to be mean, but they made upgrades, especially, I think, at defense coordinator. I don't think that's competitive. I think Florida State made a major upgrade. Now, you can argue, and I've even argued this point, I try to show both sides of the coin and be fair. Florida State is bringing in a new coordinator with a very different scheme. That makes me nervous. But Tony White is very well renowned as a coach, A, and B, he's turned around teams in year one at other places in at least certain categories, like areas they needed to take that step forward. The prime example I use most often with Coach White, when they went from Syracuse to Nebraska, the first year they were there, they were the number 9 rush defense in the country. And I know they were in the Big Ten West where quarterbacks go to die. I get it. So you could stack the box a little more. But Nebraska doesn't have top 10 talent defensively in any category. They just don't. And they were still in the top 10. You've got to give some kudos there. Did they have top 30 defensive talent? Sure. Sure, they recruit well enough, and those kids, especially from that area, they redshirt, they stay the course, they don't leave the program, they play with a lot of juniors, seniors, fifth-year seniors. Okay. But do they have the skill that Florida State has? No, they don't. They don't have the same speed. They sure as heck don't have a Darrell Jackson Jr. in the middle at nose guard. Not even anything close, KJ Sampson or anybody like that. Sampson isn't necessarily a lock to start for Florida State. He might be their most physically gifted D lineman if he was at Nebraska as a pure down lineman. Florida State's a different animal. So we go back to the original question. Can they take that step forward in learning the scheme? I don't know. That's the one big question mark. You just got to see it on game day against Alabama and what will be year 2 for DeBoer. He brings back his coordinator, but it's the same offense. The coordinator just helps him more at the coach. It's the least change of any team in college football by adding a coordinator is Alabama, because it's the same group, and those guys have worked with each other 10 plus years, I believe. So they're in a good spot. But Florida State's defense turns the ball over. It's very active, and it's got the size needed to run a 2-gap or a 1-gap system on any play. I think 13.5 is too much. That's just my opinion, mainly because of the defense. We can talk about the offense here in a few minutes. I'll get into that some more. But I want this to be 45 minutes, an hour, just like most of the live shows here on Locked On Seminoles. And I'm not going to shy away if Alabama's got fans in here that want to ask questions or go right ahead. I'm not going to be mad. I get it. Alabama is better. I think Alabama will beat Florida State. That's my guess. They have more talent, and it's only year 2 for DeBoer, but having their system installed already should help Ty Simpson a little bit, I would imagine, but we'll see. Further on, before I get into the comments in the chat, I just think Florida State kind of wants to play loose. They had all that pressure from last year, and this is just kind of an additional thing I just thought about. All that pressure from last year, they were really bad. That's just been heaped on them over and over again, yours truly included. It was deserved. They're going to play pretty free. They're going to play with house money and nothing to lose. That's an advantage, especially in front of your home crowd in a renovated, which, by the way, if you haven't seen the renderings and all that, it was good. But sometimes the renderings from like when reconstruction happens, it doesn't end up looking that way. Florida State Stadium, Doak Campbell, looks amazing. They've done a great job. So it ought to be a really lit atmosphere when Alabama comes to town for the afternoon game on August 30th. When we come back, I'm going to get into the chat. We're going to talk about Florida State's offense, the extension of why I think they can be very competitive with Bama. And again, I just don't see Bama blowing Florida State out, although a very prominent Florida State alum thinks that Alabama will blow the Noles out. We'll talk about that as well next here on Locked On Seminoles. Most people can't even name their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401k, properties, investments of any kind. And when you don't have a full picture of what you're worth and what you have, that's not going to be very good. That's where Monarch Money comes into play. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money, even without touching a spreadsheet. It's always good to get everything in one spot so you're not missing something, and you can see where you're spending money that you may not have known about, subscriptions you don't need. There's a lot of different things like that. Plus, just where should I move my money? If you got it in one spot with Monarch, it makes it a little bit easier to save cash for the long term. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Please hit that like, hit that subscribe, and make sure you share this podcast and comment down below. It helps the algorithm. If you're on Apple, please make sure you've got it set up for automatic downloads. I'm going to jump in the chat, and while I'm doing so, I'm going to add in some of my own commentary regarding what's going on with the Florida State offense. A couple of interesting additions are going to be in the starting lineup. We're going to talk about some freshmen. That's going to be fun as well. So I'm just going to start from the top. I've got quite a few people who have already already into the chat. So, Jason, what's going on, man? How you doing? Glad to see you. Rock and Roll says, evening to everyone. How you doing, sir? We got Georgie. Afternoon, sir. Good to see you, Brian. Appreciate it. I'm glad you came in to say hello tonight. I see Charles Wester is off the team. Is Charles off the team? I don't know if he is, but I know that, let's go ahead and mention this. Conrad Hussey is leaving the team. I assume that's who you're talking about. And Rock and Roll says, yes, Conrad Hussey. I'll talk about that here in a minute. Let's see what else we got. The writer says the same thing. Hussey, Jason Purdue. Tony White called him out without saying his name, and he knew it. Probably so. I'm guessing there's a lot of guys in that category. When players don't get along with what the coaches want, vice versa, sometimes you just got to cut bait. And it may be better for Hussey. I know him. He's a good guy. I don't know what happened. I haven't spoken to him, but that kind of surprised me. Let's see. Georgie. I don't buy the spread. Ask Bama fans if they think the spread isn't big enough. Bama fans always think that. They always think they're winning by 50. It's Bama fans. Some more pessimistic FSU fans think the same. I could potentially see a scenario that will follow this comment. Well, here's the deal. Fans are fans. And remember, fan is short for fanatic in regards to Bama fans. And they're spoiled. They're not going to accept that Saban is no longer the coach there. And I think DeBoer is very good. He's still not Nick Saban. So Bama is going to drag FSU for 3.5 number. Jackson got pushed around by Georgia Tech. I don't know what that even means. That's Matthew somebody, probably a Bama fan, whatever. But I highly doubt they're going to get pushed around for 3.5, whatever that means. Rock and Roll, what was your take on Coach White's PC yesterday? Do you think it was coach speak or some frustration? I think he's pretty direct. I don't think it was any coach speak. He's agitated with some guys because they're not doing what they're being asked to do. He's an A to B black and white guy. Yes or no. He's not a gray area. He's not one of those guys who hands out a multiple choice test that says both. The answer is, if the answer is 5, the answer is 5. The answer is 8, the answer is 8. He didn't name names, but based on what he did say on some names and how he kind of went through certain positions, certain ways, I think he's mad at certain players in the very front of the defense and the very back. Now, Hussey just left, so pretty obvious he was one of them. How many more, I don't know. But he hasn't mentioned Shaheem Brown in a while. I'm guessing he's one of them because he was a guy that started last year. I think he's the leading returning tackler for the Noles off the top of my head. How many of those guys are there? How many more players will Florida State lose, if any, before fall camp ends? I don't know. But overall, I just want to make a basic statement. We know Florida State's not winning a national title this year. Let's be realistic. But it's a good thing to get this stuff out now instead of the middle of the season. You still have time in fall camp to give guys more reps. Maybe it's Ashton Barker. Maybe it's I don't know if they cross-train, make up for the reps in the back. KJ Kirkland takes reps at multiple. So I have no idea. But they'll have options because they have time to do it. You don't want this to happen on the Tuesday before the Bama game. Then you're in a hole because you don't have time to try people out. It's game time. You need it now. Like, this is kind of too late, but at least there's more than a week before the game. So you have some opportunity to get the guys in the lineup and set it up. Maybe they move somebody. Again, I don't know. But as far as him being politically correct, I don't think Coach White will be very good at that during his career. It's one of the reasons I think he'll be a good head coach sooner rather than later. Florida State fans shouldn't get used to him. I think he'll be in FSU a couple of years, and he'll be a head coach. I just think he has the right moxie for the position. We'll see. Let's see what happened to Hussey. I don't know why, and I doubt we get any details. That's my guess. Matthew, Bama's O-line will push FSU around. I highly doubt that. If there's one thing I'm confident in this game, whoever you are, Matthew, that is not going to happen. Florida State is massive up front, and they got a ton of athletes. If you want to say Florida State will make errors, mental errors, and Bama gets running yards like that, fire away. Florida State's not going to get pushed around. Georgie, it's a potentially one possession late in the third, maybe they're up 10 going to the fourth. Then they pull away towards the end, scoring twice more in the last 6 minutes, making it a 3-score deficit. I could see something like that if Florida State just absolutely lays an egg, but they'd have to turn the ball over a couple times. Let's be clear. Until otherwise proven, Ty Simpson is a game manager. That's what he is, because he's never played. You can't say he's a stalwart in any way, shape, or form. And there's been no reports of him coming out of Tuscaloosa like he's unbelievable. So I'm not buying that they're winning big. I'm just not. Florida State could shoot themselves in the foot and hand it to Bama. I don't think Bama's going to run them off the field or push them around or anything else. Whoever this Matthew guy is, dude, you're an idiot if you think that I'm going to buy. I have covered college football in some capacity forever. If you want to argue, fire away. I don't think there's a chance in hell Alabama is pushing Florida State around. Note that I think Alabama will win. I've said that for months. Alabama, could you name Florida State's starting defensive front? Could you name one guy? No. You're an Alabama homer. Get the hell out of here. I don't care who you think you are. Get the hell out of here. Let's see. Georgie, all right, buddy, go roll into your third cousin. Okay, Georgie, see you later. B. Ryder, Gray's Sports Almanac says Noles 32, Bama 21. Just saying. Quarterback, Bama. What does that even mean? Hussey and Cheyenne have yet to be mentioned by Norvell or White. Yeah, that's true, but I don't know how Florida State's trying to do that. It is what it is. Take your Miami ass somewhere else. I don't care. If you think you're just better, then go right ahead and say it, but you don't know crap about Bama either. Get out of here. Who the heck is this guy? This guy's an idiot. Will Berger. Ty Simpson is going to get blitzed like crazy, knocked around by this defensive front. I don't see an Alabama win happening at all. Now, I don't agree with that. I don't know how much Florida State's going to blitz. I really don't. I think Florida State is going to be a multiple defense, and that's up in the air. But Ty is an inexperienced QB, so maybe they will. But keep in mind, Caden Proctor, elite left tackle for Bama. You're going to have to create some kind of pressure somehow. You're probably not going to beat him much one-on-one for sure. Let's see. The title should have been Things I Don't Believe. Alabama won't blow out Florida State. Okay, fantastic. FSU lives rent-free in your head. The lack of exhaustion with your mouth breathing Cane fans must be bad for your health. Yeah, no doubt. Matthew, Bama's O-line is top in the country, and with Miami and 3-dig line won't get much penetration. FSU's linebacker won't get past them either. Okay, you don't know crap. Miami's got a good O-line, so's Alabama. That has nothing to do with them pushing Florida State around. Florida State is massive. They are not going to get pushed around. You might beat them, but that's a different dynamic, and they're not going to get dominated either. DJ Furr, Conrad Hussey is no longer on the team. That is true. We've been discussing that. Mike Merrick, what's up, Brian and chat? Go Noles. What's up, Mike? Glad you're on the show, my friend. On that note, real quick, I'm going to take a break. I'm just going to hit a couple of buttons here, and we'll be right back here on Locked On Seminoles. All right, let's talk a little bit about my thoughts with regards to the offense. Alabama's defensive secondary is going to be really good. I mean, really, really good. But that's where something interesting has been developing. I've said it for a couple of weeks based on what I'd heard, and it sounds like it's going to come to fruition. Jabin Boggs, true freshman out of Cocoa, Florida, it looks like he's going to start. At least that's the trend. Everything can change because there's still plenty of fall camp remaining. However, who else would it be? The transfer in for North Carolina, I haven't heard his name in a while. When was the last time we heard it? If it's not Boggs, who's it going to be? That's a lot of pressure. I'm curious to see how Boggs does because Bama's secondary, again, very, very experienced, very, very athletic, very, very long. They've got depth. They have all the ingredients to be really good. But that's an interesting development. Talking about the offense, Boggs has earned it. He's went in and outplayed some guys that were older. And he's also went in there and earned the respect based on reports from his teammates, not just coaches. That's a good sign. In addition, they already had Chroma in front of the media. I was watching some of his press conference today, and I've met him a few times. He's always been a really great kid with the media. When we interviewed him at like Under Armour Future 50, or I've seen him on a visit when he was at Auburn one time. Always a nice kid, but he says he's just coming in playing hard as he can and kind of like whatever happens is what happens. He's letting it rip. He might be their best running back. Here's what's wild about Chroma. And everybody in the country recruited him out of Lee County High School in Georgia, but he didn't enroll until this summer. That is rare. That is really, really rare. Florida State or anybody else that gets a kid in the summer, it's not normal for them to immediately hit the ground running and play right away, especially if Bama is going to be one of those games. Now, Gavin Sawchuk, Rodell Williams, and several other guys, Cam Davis, they're all good football players. They'll all contribute. And, of course, don't forget about my favorite guy, Jalen Lucas. They're all quite talented. But Chroma being talked about the way he has, already being up in front of the media, that's a really good sign. So with that, and the offensive line is very experienced. Florida State's got one of the most experienced offensive lines collectively. I know they haven't played together in the country. I think they'll run the ball pretty well, especially with Tommy being able to ad lib on a pass protection that didn't go well or something like that. I think it'll go pretty good for him. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be easy by any way, shape, or form to be consistent running the ball. So they're going to need some wild plays. And that's where Chroma might come in because he breaks tackles like crazy. But it is what it is. Tommy Castellanos is the key to the game. That is from Warren Hester. Like, there's a lot of truth in that. He can't turn it over. And getting the ball to Boggs, getting the ball to Chroma is just part of it. But Landon Thomas, Deuce Robinson, making sure that Squirrel White is involved. He's had a pretty good last week camp. All of those guys got to get the ball at the right times against a quality defense that is very well established in terms of how it's coached, but it's even better in terms of talent, in my opinion. So that's not an easy task. Let's see. Mario Nash, the O-line practices against the day one D tackle. That is true. It's going to be kind of surprising to me based on all reports. If Big Darrell doesn't go in the first round, somebody's going to take a chance on him early. He's 330 something and he can move. The O-line's got to practice against Darrell on the daily. Probably not very much fun. That'll help them. And iron sharpens iron, as the old saying goes. Rock and roll, smash that like button, everyone. Yes, please do. Like and subscribe. Make sure you're getting in here as often as possible. And if you're listening to this later on Apple, make sure you hit that automatic download. Georgie, that was in response to Matthew Bryan. Oh, no problem. No problem. My bad. Let's see. Will Daniel Lyons make a step up this season? I thought Daniel played pretty well early last year. This is from Yanni. I don't know if he's one of those guys. I'm trying to remember. Somebody correct me, but has Daniel been a guy that's been mentioned directly? And for the record, Coach White said, hey, I'm probably missing somebody, and he kind of went through names. I don't remember if he was one of them, but he was one of the better players, I thought, last year because he was the guy that had a lot more effort. Let's see. Kane thing 24. I think Florida State has a really good offensive coordinator. I think Gus is pretty good at it, especially with the run game. He's a pain to prepare for. Let's see. Georgie. Brian is in a mood, and I love it. I'm not playing around tonight, guys. I am very, very steadfast in what I believe. Brian yelling like Norvell. That's from John Shields. I don't know if I'm quite as loud as Norvell was in that press conference. That's still very weird. Let's see. King Lewis, Ty Simpson's a bum. I don't know if he's a bum, but he hasn't played much. Nobody really knows what he is. Matthew. Yeah, my bad. You know more. Florida State is going 16-0. No, Florida State is definitely not. I have picked him to go 7-5, 8-4. I'm as honest as anybody in the entire world about the team he covers. If you don't believe me, ask anybody in this chat. I let it rip. I do not care if somebody likes it. I do not care if somebody unsubscribes. I'm going to tell it like it is. If you don't like it, goodbye. I was just kidding, Kane thing. Well, that's fine. I am not. He is a pain to prepare for, and there's no doubt about it. Let's see. I didn't think they blitzed much in the opening quarter unless White sees a weakness or an exploit. Yeah, that's possible. I don't know how you just sit back the whole game against Bama because any quarterback will eventually get in a rhythm, and I don't think Florida State will just consistently get pressure against Bama's front. They've got a time when they blitz. They need a little luck too. Don't blitz when they screen, stuff like that. They need to hit it just right, because otherwise it's going to be really, really difficult. I think that Bama's receivers are good. I think that they can take simple plays and make a lot of yards after the catch. Mario Nash, Bama says always struggled with running quarterback. Florida State will be a problem with Tommy. I don't doubt that at all. Let's see. Who are some of the star athletes we should watch for? If you're referring to Bama, or are you referring to Florida State? I think for Bama, I mean, Ryan Williams' first 5 answers to that question. Nobody's covering that kid one-on-one consistently. But outside of that, to be honest with you, for Alabama, I'm not even sure which guy is going to be the main ball carrier, because I think they're going to rotate. And they also have Jeremy Bernard returning at receiver, and they got Horton. If I remember right, he's transferred to Bama. That's right. He's the other receiver. And they've got some other guys coming up too. Bama's depth chart, just kind of looking at it before the show, I noticed a few guys that I covered, like Hale. He was a really athletic wide receiver out of East Texas, Jalen Hale. He can fly. Rico Scott's a kid that can really fly. He's out of Pennsylvania. Those guys are backups. Latsier Brooks, another kid that can fly. He's out of New Jersey. They got some skill talent. How much do they mesh with a new quarterback? It's kind of like with Florida State. It's really, really difficult. And, let's see. Yanni, which players do you think will break out this season? Well, I think Boggs. I think that's pretty obvious. Obviously, Chroma, those two. As for another freshman, and I was writing some of these down so I didn't forget them before the show was over, but give some props to Mandrell and Daryl Desir, the true freshmen out of Norland High School. I believe they're at Norland this past year, down in Miami. They're getting a lot of run. They're going to play some. You got Chroma. You've got Kevin Sperry might have to play. That may not be a good thing if TC gets hurt, but we'll see. But the guy that probably hasn't been discussed enough in fall camp, by me at least, is Kevin Wynn. I've talked about him, and he was a dude. I thought he was the best player in the class. Another kid out of Georgia, 320-plus pounds. He's the backup to Darryl at nose guard already. He is an animal. Absolutely an animal. He was a guy that at the All-Star game out in Texas, they had to take him out of the defensive lineup when the other side of the ball for his team was running install because he blew up everything. They literally took him out of the practice, just had him stand over there. He is a horse. He's probably going to have some impact. BJ Gibson and all those freshmen / sophomore, redshirt freshman, sophomore receivers, all of them should play. Lil Wayne McCoy, Fryer. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that won't. Which one is the standout, though? I really wouldn't want to guess. It's hard to say because I don't think Deuce Robinson's going to come off the field a lot. I doubt Squirrel does. Maybe it's Elijah Moore. And it kind of depends on which guys play which spots. I don't know. Defensively, maybe one of the other young DBs, Kai Bates, probably at some point, I would imagine. He's a really smart kid. Knew him well from Edgewater High School in Orlando. He was an elite student and just very savvy. Jabril Rawls sounds like he's a redshirt sophomore, but he's played some. But I think sounds like he might be a starter. KJ Kirkland, redshirt sophomore out of Jacksonville. He's a kid out of Rains High School. He was a great kid when I met him in high school. All those guys are taking that step up. But now the question is not who's going to break out. It's who's going to be able to rotate in so you can send guys in waves. And I don't know the answer to that. And it's an important one.